When you are around the right people, Chris, and in the right places, what happens is opportunity. So we all long for opportunity, but if somebody says to me, well, I just can't catch a break, I can't catch an opportunity, I can tell you right now, they're not around the right people and they're not in the right places, maybe both.
It's our limiting beliefs that ultimately keep us from becoming the best we're capable of becoming. Something's got to change, but that change has to happen first on the inside. It's time to get unstuck. It's time to get your why back. It's never too late. Let's start today.
Helping you design your roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. This is Win Today. And now, here's your host, Christopher Cook.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. And as always, thank you so much for the download. This is episode 144 of Win Today, and this is your roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. And hey, I want to give a special shout out to everyone who's joining us right now from Spotify. Within the last week, we started broadcasting on Spotify, and I could not be more thrilled to be reaching more people on that awesome platform. So welcome to the conversation. Well, guys, I'm really excited for this week's show because I believe the conversation is directly applicable to you right now. Check this stat out. According to a recent poll, 70% of Americans say they are not passionate about their work and are desperately longing for meaning and purpose. 70%. That's a huge number of people in the workforce. So maybe you're one of them. So here's the question I want to ask to you today. Are you sick of showing up to a job you hate with a leader you can barely tolerate? And are you tired of living an average daily life and know there's something better out there but just don't know how to reach it? Listen, if so, no matter where you're at in your career path, today's episode is going to be a gift-wrapped package with your name on it because today we're talking about one basic principle called the proximity principle, which can and probably will change everything you thought you knew about pursuing a career you love. And joining us today is someone who is no stranger to this time-tested principle. His name? Ken Coleman. Ken Coleman is a national radio host and career expert whose passion and purpose is to provide his listeners and readers with a simple plan of how positioning yourself near the right people and in the right places can help you land the job you love. But you see, for Ken, living the dream didn't happen overnight. In fact, in the midst of a successful six-figure career, Ken sat on his back patio one day and realized that living the safe, smart path in which he was working had left his true passion for broadcasting in the dust. So with zero experience and very few connections, he realized that he needed to be intentional about connecting with the right people and being in the right places that would help him turn a side gig into his full-time dream career. And in short, today he is living that very dream and is going to show you how to do the very same thing in whichever field you're in. Folks, it's time to eliminate yourself from the large majority of Americans who hate their job. So in this week's conversation, you're going to learn how to connect with the right people and put yourself in the right places so opportunities will come and you will be prepared to take them. You ready? Let's get right to it. Here's my conversation with Ken Coleman. Well, Ken, I am so thrilled you're here. Welcome back.
Well, Chris, I'm glad to be back with you.
Thanks, Ken. Hey, today we're talking about your brand new book, The Proximity Principle. It's available right now. And in it, Ken, you say that 70% of working adults wake up each and every day and go to work at a job they hate. That's such a huge stat, but can you say there's actually a way to stop that train of monotony and to give life to the actual passion and purpose that's inside each of us? So as we begin today, I'd love to know, what's the underlying principle we need in order to chart a new course?
Yeah, it's entitled The Proximity Principle, which is the title of the book, and it is the hope that I believe many people need, that it is possible for you to make a switch. If you fell into a major and then fell into a job coming out of college and you woke up at 35, 45, and you are doing work that you have no passion for, but you feel like, well, I've got a mortgage, I've got kids, I've got, whatever going on, and these all feel like limitations that keep you from making the change and pursuing what it is that you were called to do. The proximity principle is the path. It really is the proven plan that will allow you to step into work you love. And it says, in order to do what I want to do, I've got to be around people that are doing it or in places where it is happening. So let's talk about the it. So whatever that is, whether it's accounting or technology, coding, who knows? You pick the field. There are people that are doing what you want to do. And there are places where what you want to do is happening, whether it be, again, conferences, trade shows, trade schools, webinars online, books, podcasts, YouTube channels. It's extraordinary. Right now, if you wanted to become a photographer and somebody called me on my show and said, Ken, I want to be a photographer, but I can't afford to go to school. I'd say, great. You don't have to go to school to become a photographer. What you need to do is go, follow a couple people that I know on YouTube that have great YouTube channels that teach you about equipment to lighting to, all the different techniques. And there are photographers who've written books and photographers who have podcasts and there are webinars and all these things. So the idea is I can get in proximity to people that are doing what I want to do and in places where what I want to do is happening. And so that's the simplicity and also the power of the proximity principle, that when you are around the right people, Chris, and in the right places, what happens is opportunity. So we all long for opportunity, but if somebody says to me, well, I just can't catch a break, I can't catch an opportunity, I can tell you right now, they're not around the right people and they're not in the right places, maybe both.
Ken, what's the first step we need to do in order to begin the process of making a change?
Well, you have to decide that I actually am willing to do what it takes and wait as long as it takes. I mean, this is what separates people who do things and people who don't. And there are a lot of people, for instance, that would say, if I put them to the test, I'm willing to do what it takes. Okay, yeah, if it's 1 through 10 steps, I tell you the steps. Are you willing to do them knowing at the end of the 10 steps you're going to get what you want? Well, sure, most people are going to sign up for that. What people aren't willing to do is wait as long as it takes. So the doing comes with waiting. It always does. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's not how it works on the journey. There's a lot of starts and stops and detours and pitfalls and going backwards. You can be at step 5 and then all of a sudden something happens and it knocks you back to step 3. This is the reality of the journey. And so in order to get going and use proximity, you have to take that very first step. And that is so important because most people won't take that first step. It's inertia. It's momentum. It is, okay, I'm going to make the first connection. And I'm going to sit down with somebody over coffee who is in the field that I want to be in, and I'm just going to spend less than $5, and I'm going to find out everything I can from their journey. That's that first step. That's not that scary, but that first step will lead to another step, and then the next step, the next step. So it's deciding to actually step out is the first thing you got to do.
Ken, do you think then it's the fear of failure, the fear of getting knocked back, as you just said, that keeps people from even taking that first step of making the change? In other words, the comfort of their position, even though they're getting up and going to a job they hate, at least the paycheck's coming in. What's that? What's the holdback that you've seen in your listeners?
Well, there's multiple fears. And then there's fear's cousin. So let's talk about the multiple fears. You mentioned fear of failure. No question that is scary. People look at that and they go, okay, in fact, I had a call today on my show. A lady who was making $70,000 a year in an accounting role and it has nothing to do with what she really wants to do. She knows exactly what she wants to do, but she's so scared to actually get after it because she feels like if I do, we're going to set our debt-free journey behind. It might cause other financial problems. And I said, well, who said you had to just jump and make half of what you're making now? No, it doesn't work that way. Now you can do it that way, but that's not advantageous and it's not necessary. So there's fear of financial failure. If I switch gears, I'm going to set my family behind financially. And by the way, if you have a plan and it takes the time that it usually takes to make the transformation anyway, then there is no jumping. It's just a nice, easy step from one boat onto the next boat. So that's the fear of failure. There's also the fear of rejection. Now, this just takes us all back. Let's just turn this into what it really is. We can all go back to elementary school or middle school or high school, and we asked a girl out, or we told a guy that we liked him, or whatever it is, and you got rejected. Or you auditioned for something. You auditioned for a part in the school play, or you tried out for the basketball team or the football team or the cheerleading team, whatever it is, and you didn't make it. You got told no. A lot of people, Chris, fear rejection. It's scary stuff. To face the no, and that feels very, very personal, and it's a stinging feeling. So that's fear of failure and fear of rejection. And I'm going to give you one more: fear of peers. Fear of peers. We get this a lot on my show. Callers will call in and say, listen, I know I want to do this, but I got a lot of people in my life are telling me that's not smart. Why would you leave a great job that you're 8-9 years from a pension or whatever, or you got a really stable job and you're going to start a new career? And that's the fear of peers. And that could be family members or friends. And so those fears cripple people because you just don't want to face that. And so what your heart's telling you gets drowned out by your mind and the voices that are in your head. And we've got to get to a point where our head and heart align, and that's how we make sure that the lies of the head don't drown out what we know is true in our heart. And then the last thing is the cousin I told you about, which is doubt. I doubt that I have what it takes. I just doubt that there is a way. I doubt that anybody will help me. Whatever the doubt is. And doubt is also very crippling.
Ken, what I really appreciate about you is that you're not just a theorist, you're a practitioner. So take us on a journey into your own story. What was the path like from your previous career into broadcasting?
Well, it was a long, meandering journey of about 7.5 to 8 years. And it started out really humble. I had to recognize what it was going to take. What did I need to learn to become a broadcaster? What were the skills and the fundamentals that I needed to acquire? And that started off with me signing up for a local broadcasting school with a local TV and radio producer. It was called Complete Game Broadcasting, and I signed up. Come to find out, I was the very first student, and that made me a little cynical. But I had a face-to-face with the guy, and he seemed to be very reputable and didn't seem like a kook, and he wasn't. And Jeff was a very instrumental guy in my journey and taught me the basics. But I was, the only guy in my 30s in the class. It was like 3 or 4 weeks in when the other young guys in the class realized I wasn't an instructor and stopped calling me sir. And so that's where it started out. And then, I'm in the classroom learning. And then the first live broadcast I ever did in my life wasn't much of a live broadcast. And it was calling high school football play-by-play on the internet. So it wasn't even on a radio station at first. It was just, he was streaming it on his website. And nobody was listening except the kid next to me who was doing the color analyst role. And then my wife at home, because she's a good woman and she wanted to say something nice about me when I walked back in the house. So, we're talking about humble, teeny, tiny, minuscule beginnings. And those were the early steps for me. And again, that led me to some other relationships. So we're talking about right people now. And then those right people helped put me in other right places and eventually got us a 4-part series on Comcast Sports Southeast, one of their shows that I funded myself. And, walked in off the street through a connection and said, hey, this is my idea. She said, put together, the producer said, I'll never forget Jennifer. She says, I like the idea, but give it to me as though I was going to put it on the air. It needs to be, fully lit and mastered to sound and all that stuff. And so I went and talked to another friend of mine who had done a lot of corporate videos for local businesses. And I said, hey, Rob, I can barely pay you, but I'll cover your costs. Will you help me do this? And he said, yeah. And so we turned it in, and it turned into a 4-part series, and I proved to myself I could get on TV. But these are just some of the things I did early on. No money at all paid for out of my pocket, and I didn't have a whole lot in the pocket to begin with. So those were some of the early days, but each one of those steps, and just illustrated by those 2 stories, those were early on. But while I didn't get a lot of recognition, and I got no compensation, what I got was confidence and clarity that, yeah, I really do love this. I love broadcasting. I love the idea of creating something that people can consume in this medium. And so it did a lot for me from a confidence standpoint and clarity.
Oh, Ken, you wrote that finding people who make an opportunity happen for us is the easy part then. And the hard part, though, is getting some of their time and convincing them to help you on your own journey. So who did you seek out, Ken, and how did you get some of their time?
Well, it's not as hard as people want to make it out. I agree, acknowledge that it seems very hard. But here, let me give everybody a secret. You don't have to have something to offer people when you ask for their time. So if you want to have coffee with people that are in your industry doing what you want to do, there are certain people that you may not be able to get to, but there are a lot of people who, what I call producers in the book. Producers are people that are winning, and they're operating at a pretty successful level in your industry. And they don't have to know you personally if you have a mutual connection, and all of us do. All of us are 2 to 3 to 4 degrees away from just about anybody in life if you're willing to make the ask. And so when you sit down with somebody like that, you don't have to offer them something of value. You offer humility and hunger. And if you offer humility and hunger, they feel valued. And nothing is more value added than making someone feel valuable. Let me illustrate. So if I sit down with somebody who I really admire and I don't know them very well at all, and I get a meeting set up because a mutual connection said, hey, give Ken some time. And I did this many times. And so I sit down with them, and I came in with something to write with, piece of paper, pad, actually a moleskin, that's what I use, and a pencil, that's my game. So I'd show up, and I'm going to start off the conversation just profusely thanking them. Thank you for your time. I'm so grateful that you'd be willing to do this, and I want to make the most of our time. I admire you. I think you're somebody that I should model myself after. I want to be in your field, or I want to do what you want to do, or what you are doing. And so I'm just here to learn from you. So if you're okay, I just want to ask you lots of questions and go to school, because I'll learn more from you in this 1 hour lunch or 30-minute coffee than I could in 2 years in a specific program. When you lead like that, that person is going to say, okay, here's what they're thinking. They're going, number one, Ken appears to be very grateful that I've given my time, so that I appreciate that he's grateful. Number two, he's humble. He's there not to ask me to do anything for him other than let him pick my brain. And so, wow, I appreciate that. And then I can tell that he really admires me and wants to learn from me. Boy, do I feel very valuable right now. Now, who doesn't want to help somebody who treats them that way? And the answer is very few people. Most people are going to feel valued, and that is the value that you're offering. You're making them feel valuable. And it's not fake. You ought to be the way that I just described. So it's not that difficult. You just have to kind of swallow your pride and be okay with somebody telling you no, or putting you off, or maybe giving you the runaround. Some people will, but just as many people, or I think more people will give you their time if you approach it that way. And so you better be taking a lot of notes, and you better finish that time with, man, I'm grateful. Ma'am, I'm grateful. Whatever the situation is, thank you. I learned so much. I can't tell you how valuable this is. And I'm going to put into practice what you've told me to do. Now, when you walk away, you don't ask them for a job. You don't ask them for a connection. I think that's deadly. I think what you do is you thank them and you walk away. And here's what they're going to, and you could say something like, hey, listen, is there anybody else that you think I need to go sit with and do this? Now, see, that's not you saying connect me to them. You're saying, who else do you think I need to sit with? Well, they're going to recommend it, and many times they're going to make the connection if they have the connection. But that's all you say other than thank you. Now you walk away. And when you walk away, at some point you're going to pop into their mind if something comes along that makes a lot of sense. And I can't tell you how many times I got connected to somebody, or I got put in the right place because of that description of what I just gave you, of that kind of interaction that years later led to an awesome connection. And I'm talking years later. You're not doing this trying to game the system. This needs to be genuine. And if it's genuine, it'll yield results when it's supposed to yield results, and not a second before.
Yeah, that's powerful, Ken. Well, let's bring this home for the listeners then, because in the book you identify 5 specific types of people who are going to help us along the way. I'd love to know, who are they?
Well, I mentioned the producers just a moment ago. These are people that are winning at a high level in the industry that you want to be in. You've got professionals, which is another level up, maybe multiple levels from the producer. And what I'm talking about here, these are the men and women that are world-renowned, famous, powerful, whatever you want to use there, but they're another echelon or two up above the producers. And so it's a real long shot that you'd be able to sit with them. Give you an example. Bob Costas, one of the most renowned sports broadcasters in America, at Larry King Live, a legendary interviewer. These are 2 men that I learned a lot from watching their television shows or watching them do interviews on YouTube. And so they would be an example of professionals that very much had influence on me and how I broadcast to this day. But I've never met them, and I don't know that I ever will. Would love to, but I haven't met them. But I didn't need to meet them to learn from them. And so that's an idea that's the example of a professional. Then you've got the professor. Now, this is illustrated with the guy from the broadcasting school that I mentioned at the very start of our conversation, Jeff Batten. He was not a college professor, and it doesn't have to be a college professor. Can it be a college professor? Sure. But it could also be an instructor in a trade school. Like essentially what I'm calling this broadcast school was really a trade school. And so the attributes of a professor is somebody that knows what you need to know and is actually willing to teach you. And so that's the heart of a professor. So that's the professor. Then, of course, we have peers. And, Jim Rohn so famously said, we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. There's a well-known Harvard study on relationships that says that 95% of your success or failure is directly attributed to the people you spend the most time with. So this idea of peers. So I want to be around people who push me, who lift me, and hold me accountable. 3 different things there. They push me by just the nature of their own example. When I'm around them and talking to them and seeing them live their life, they push me to be more, to do more because of how they model the way. They lift me. I want peers around me who are going to encourage me when I get down. Who will come alongside of me when things don't go my way and say, hey, you got this, you're fine, stay in the game. It's going to be fine. And then they hold me accountable. They know the plans, they know the vision, they know the goals. And if they see me slacking off, they're going to go, hey, you're not giving everything. You're not being the dad that you said you wanted to be. You're not being the husband you said you wanted to be. You're falling behind. You're not doing the things that you know you're supposed to do and I know you should do, and I'm just calling you out. You need to have that relationship with peers. And then the final group is the mentors. And again, I've been very blessed to have a handful, about 5 men in my life that in different areas and in different seasons played a tremendous role that only a mentor can play. And that's the combination of they're going to give me knowledge. They're also going to give me wisdom. So I can go to them for specific, okay, hey, I'm thinking, what do you think about this? And they're going to give me some tactical knowledge. And then there are times where there's no real knowledge issue. It's just a wisdom issue. Hey, here's what I've experienced. Here's what I think you should do. Wait a little bit. They're going to give me insight and wisdom. And then also there's a form of accountability there too. If you're in a regular rhythm of meeting with a mentor and you're going through some key goals and some things like that you want to do, that mentor is there to hold you accountable as well. And so those are the 5 people that if you are intentional to be around, you're going to get tremendous opportunity to do what you love to do.
Again, folks, the proximity principle can be boiled down to getting around the right people, as Ken said, and being in the right place. Ken, we just talked a lot about being around the right people. Let's talk about being in the right place, because I'm sure people right now are thinking, well, what if I need to pack up and move to a new city? How do you respond to that?
Well, in most cases, you don't have to move somewhere to go somewhere. And what I mean by that is you don't have to change zip codes to begin to make progress in your career and on the path to fulfilling your purpose. Now, there are times where you do have to move, but this notion that in order for me to do what I want to do, I'm going to absolutely have to get a rider truck and move the family and uproot our family and all that stuff. That's a complete lie, and it becomes an excuse for a lot of people as to why they don't actually pursue it. Well, it's just not practical for me to move, and I've missed my boat. And it's really tragic. I'll give you an example. I had a caller call in to my show recently. It was a guy who was living in Charlotte, North Carolina. He started off the call by saying, hey, Ken, I know exactly what I want to do, but I don't think there's a way to get there. And I said, okay, tell me more. He said, I always wanted to be into television production, basically producing and directing films, television shows, videos. I just love producing and directing video. I said, great. I said, so you think you got to move to LA or New York? He goes, yeah, and that's just not feasible. I said, I get it. I said, let me ask you this. How many production companies do you think are thriving right now in Charlotte, North Carolina? And he chuckled, paused for a second, and he said, I don't know, probably a couple dozen. I go, yeah, I think that's probably right. And I pushed him a little more. I said, you think about all the local TV commercials you watch that come on during your national TV shows. You got your national ads, and you got car dealers, you got plumbers, you got attorneys. We all know what we're talking about here. All those are filmed and produced and edited locally. So there are local production companies all over cities in America. Video's become a huge deal. You know this, Chris. You're a guy who's savvy on social media. I mean, you got companies now. If you don't have video content on your website, you're behind. And right. So I made the point that there is multiple opportunity for you to do what you want to do in Charlotte, North Carolina. Well, he got it. He absolutely received it. And I told him to use the proximity principle. Start hanging around people that are in video production. Start showing up at places where you know there's going to be shoots, and volunteer your time. Say, hey, I've got a background on this, and right now I just want to help out any way I can, trying to get back into the industry, and I'll help out. I'll hold a camera, or I'll hold a microphone, or I'll do some lighting. You just get where that's happening. And would you know that 6 weeks later he called back on the show and he landed the gig. He had a great gig at a production company. So, this idea that you've got to move somewhere to go somewhere in your career is a complete lie. Which, by the way, in the book, we call that the law of the zip code. So I've got a principle book, and then I came up with a law. The law of the zip code says the law of the zip code says everything I need to get started is already around me. And I want to make sure people grab that. You can get started where you are.
Folks, I want to echo exactly what Ken just said, because it's important for you to internalize it. You can get started wherever you are. So whatever's in your heart today, you can get started without having to pick up your life and move to a new city. So with that being said, Ken, is there anything else you want to expound upon regarding the law of the zip code before we move on?
Well, it's not a rational thought. Fear never is. The only thing I can explain it with is I remember with all three of my kids, there came a moment where Ty, Chase, and Josie jumped into the pool for the first time. And every parent who's listening has been through this. If you're not a parent, there was a point in your life where you probably jumped in the pool and either mom or dad was there to catch you. It was your big moment. I'm going to jump in the pool. I got my floaties on. I know that I'm going to float and not drown. I know this at the age of 4. But all of a sudden, all rational thought leaves our head, right? And the mom and dad's down in the pool going, I'm going to catch you, baby. I'm going to catch you. I promise I'm going to catch you. And the kid's looking at you like, I don't even know who you are. You're an alien. I don't trust you. I'm going to drown. And I'm not jumping in this pool. That's what happens. And at some point, we all inched off the side of the pool. The toes got a little further and further off the edge. And eventually we jumped. But we jumped with a ton of fear. But mom or dad caught us. And all of a sudden, it's a game changer. I'll never forget. I thought, well, this will be fun. They'll jump one time and they'll get over their fear and we'll move on. No, they wanted to jump 17 million times after that. That's all we did the rest of the day. Daddy, look. And then they'd say, back up. I want to jump further. And I go, no. And at some point, you go to the mom or dad says, hey, that's a little too far. No, I'm not backing up any further. Well, what happened? Well, what happened is that they decided to actually jump, and the fear that so overtook them has now completely dissipated. Now they're being a little reckless. They've gone from fearful to reckless, and so the idea of the law of the zip code is I don't care who you are. There's something you can start to learn. There's something you can start to do. There's someone you can start to connect with in your zip code that will get you started. Now, again, you may need to move. But you don't have to move zip codes to start on the path. And I don't care how afraid you are, the more you step out, the less the fear.
The more you step out, the less the fear. Such a powerful principle. Ken, for a moment, I want to step back into your story. I want to go back to one of your first speaking gigs in which you introduced clowns of all things. What was so important about that early yes in your own journey to broadcasting?
Well, it's the tail end of the answer I just gave. So I knew that I needed some activity. I had gotten stuck in a rut. I was scared of I was fearful. I was dealing with doubt, insecurity, and just a lot of Eeyores going around in my head, just moping around, just the human Eeyore. And I had made a decision on my back patio that I write about in the very start of the book that I was going to start just getting out there, and I needed to do hosting gigs because I thought hosting was my way of getting in to broadcasting. So doing live event hosting, anything I could. And so I said, I've got to branch out and build something. And so I went and talked to the organizers of the Suwannee Day Festival in Suwannee, Georgia. And I knew that they probably didn't have an MC, and the person that did it probably didn't want to do it, but nobody else would do it, so they were going to do it. And I thought, well, I'll go do it. So I had done some stuff and on the stage and my whole life and all that, but it's just like I needed to do it. And of course, I have no idea who I'm going to introduce in the early docket. This is when nobody's paying attention. And I think the Smithereens were the big act at the end of the night, and I introduced the Smithereens. But before that, I introduced a balloon artist, who was doing balloon animals. And then I introduced a mime, and I went to give the mime a high five after I introduced him, and he did the old, slap the fake glass kind of thing and didn't even actually make contact. So I got left hanging by a mime. This was the low point in my career. And I remember being there all day long, started at noon, and I didn't leave the stage till about 9:30 at night and didn't see my wife and kids all day on a Saturday. And it broke my heart. I was like, what am I doing? I've lost my mind. But I will tell you what I did that day. Nothing came out of that gig from a connection, but I'll tell you what came out of it is that I proved to myself I was willing to suffer in anonymity, to totally swallow my pride, and just do something for the sake of doing it. Just do it so that it leads to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And if you're willing to introduce balloon animals, because there's nothing that kept me from walking off that stage. I mean, I could have said, this is it. I'm not doing this. You're stuck. But that would have been a bad character move. So then I had to swallow my pride and suck it up and be a person of character and integrity and do it, even though it wasn't glamorous and it was embarrassing and humiliating. But I did it.
Yeah, you did. And Ken, what I hear you saying is that up front, you made the decision to do the small things, to do the hard things that would have a potential return in the future. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the proximity mindset. We write about it in the very back of the book. I'm going to do whatever it takes and wait as long as it takes. And part of doing whatever it takes is going, okay, I'm going to have to take some of these small roles, but I'm not going to have a bad attitude about it. I'm going to actually suck it up and I'm going to do it. You got to know your role, accept your role, and maximize your role. If you want to move to the next thing in life, those are the three things you have to know and do. I've got to know my role. This is it. I'm hosting Swanee Day. There is nothing glamorous around the corner. This is what I signed up for. I got to do that. And I've got to accept it, that this is just early on in the journey, and this doesn't define me. It shouldn't humiliate me. I'm just going to do it. And then I got to do the best I can. And let me tell you something. I was the best Swanee Day host in the history of Swanee Day. Not from a compliment standpoint, but I gave it everything I had. Yeah. And I really did do a good job. Nobody was listening to me. I can tell you right now, I sounded like that voice on Charlie Brown. Nobody was listening to anything I had to say, but I did it.
Yeah. Wow. Ken, that's powerful. To that, and I think this turns the page on the question that I want to ask you next, Ken, and that's limiting beliefs. That's about limiting beliefs, I should say. So I'd love for you to break down some of the most insidious limiting beliefs that keep us from moving forward and the ones that keep us from pressing into the proximity principle.
Well, we talked about several of those with fear and doubt earlier, but I would say that to add to that list, we didn't talk about pride. There's something about the human condition where we don't want to ask somebody for help. We don't want to say, hey, I'm stuck. I don't need help. That's why I am so inspired by the men and women that call my show every day. They're calling a national radio show and they're saying, hey, Ken, I need help. I'm stuck. And I'm inspired by them. I really am. And they inspire me to keep helping people because they're saying, hey, I need help. So pride is the thing where, we all are thrilled if we kind of get this, what we would call luck or happenstance. Some kind of situation falls on our lap. We go, oh boy, that's great. We'll tell everybody about that. But we are less likely to tell somebody, hey, I need help with a connection. And I need help with identifying the right people. I need help identifying the right places. And then would you be willing to connect me to some of these people? Would you help me get in some of these places? There's something about the pride of saying, I want to do it myself and I don't want to come across as though I'm not successful or that I'm not where I want to be. We're more worried about what people think of us than we are about doing what it's going to take. And so pride's a big one, in addition to the other ones that we talked about. The other one is, I don't think I have what it takes. So there are a lot of people who suffer from, they know what their heart's telling them they want to do, but they really have a lot of self-doubt, tremendous self-doubt, insecurity. I don't know if I've got what it takes. I don't think I can do it. What if I can't do it? I mean, I know what I want to do and it sounds great, but I just don't know. I just don't know if I have the ability to pull it off. And so that's another tremendous limiting belief. I don't have what it takes. Another limiting belief is I just don't matter. Like some people will call the show and they'll say, Ken, I have no idea what my passion is. And I'll say, well, sure you do. Come on. You may not have identified it before, but you know what it is. And I'll start pushing back. And then I find out that they're suffering from some type of insecurity or doubt in the past. Could be mental abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, abandonment in their life, you name it. But something happened earlier on in their life, and it sent the message that you don't matter. And when somebody feels like they don't matter, well, of course they're not going to be able to identify passion in a role because they've already bought the lie. I don't matter. If I died today, nobody in this world would miss me. And that couldn't be any more untrue. We believe on the Ken Coleman Show that every person on the planet was born to fill a unique role. That means it's needed. And that also means you have to do it because there's somebody out there that needs you to be you. And if you're not you, you've let somebody down. So stop thinking this is all about you because it's not about you. It's about the people out there who don't even know your name yet. It's about the people that you might help and they never even told you helped them. When I think about the teachers, Chris, that call in on this show and they feel burned out and they feel like they're going to walk away, and I think about how these men and women will serve young people and for not a lot of pay and hardly any glory, if any at all. And they feel as though they've made no impact at all. And what I know about teachers in my life, I know it's true about teachers in other people's lives, that many kids have come through those classrooms and it could have been one smile, one high five, one attaboy, attagirl, one extra session after class to help them get through a problem that was devastating their self-esteem. I don't know what it is. I think all of you can identify with this. But that kid could walk out of that classroom and go on to change the world and never get back to that teacher and let them know. So this idea of impact is really, really heavy when you accept the responsibility that you were created to fill a role. It's needed. You got to do it. And so that's a lot of the limiting beliefs that we've really wrapped up, in a nice package. It hits just about everybody has those limiting beliefs at some point in their journey.
Yes. Well, Ken, you touched on burnout and you mentioned that space, but I want to stay there for a second and actually talk about your principle regarding burnout. Your keynote, as I had mentioned before we got on the call today at the Entree Leadership Summit this past week, was absolutely phenomenal. And in it, Ken, you touched on, and you taught on, rather, the myth of burnout and rather build up. I'd love for everyone joined with us today to hear about the difference between and the myth of burnout and how it actually plays out in build up.
Sure. Well, there's no such thing as burnout. It just doesn't exist until the day you die. So this idea that you're walking around burned out, the very phrase means that the flame burned out. It's not there anymore. That's what burning out is. I love to do fire pits, and we do them all the time at our house. I love sitting around a great fire. And when it's time to go in, the way you let a fire burn out is you separate the coals and you kind of spread it all around and spread all the wood out, and then it's going to burn for a while, but eventually it burns out. And so once that flame is gone, no fire. Once there's no more discernible flame. So we all have a flame. And if you are breathing right now, I got good news for you. You're not burned out. Now there's coming a day where the flame is extinguished, and that's when we slip into eternity. Until then, there's a flame there. Now, buildup is the reason you don't see or feel or smell the flame. When I'm sitting in front of a fire, there's three senses that are engaged. I see the flame, I feel the flame, and I smell the flame. Okay? So the buildup can cover up your heart. So picture your flame as like a light. And if I put multiple blankets over a light, the light's still on, but I can't see the light. Can't see it. And so buildup is what's happening on people's hearts. So just picture heavy blankets piled up on top of your heart. Your heart's a light, and those blankets can cover up what you believed was on at one point, and you go, I can't see the light, so it's not on. I'm burned out. Here are the 5 causes of buildup. Now, these are generalizations, but they pretty much cover all the things that would cover a person's heart up. Number 1 is there's zero passion for your work. So you're good at it, but you don't enjoy it. It doesn't bring joy to your heart. It doesn't fire your soul up when you're engaged in it. This can cause buildup. After a while, when there's no connection to my work, I start to think, this job doesn't matter to me. Then the next thought is, if the job doesn't matter to me, it doesn't matter to anybody else. Now we're getting in a dangerous place. And the third thing that happens is it goes from the job doesn't matter to me, it doesn't matter to anybody, I don't matter. And that's when we have people taking their lives because there's no reason to go on. They've lost hope. So that's one major reason for buildup. The second reason for buildup is toxicity in the workplace. This is a toxic leader or a toxic team. A leader who is unhealthy, abusive, bully type leader, a lying leader, whatever. You fill in the blank. It's just poor leadership. Or you've got unhealthy teammates, backbiting, gossip, unhealthy competitiveness, a cutthroat mentality, me versus we, a toxic environment. And so that can cause buildup. You could love your work, but come into an unhealthy environment and it'll suck the life right out of you. You won't want to go back in. So the third reason for buildup is overwhelmed. You just feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hydrant. If I crack open a fire hydrant right now, it's going to be a geyser strength stream of water coming right at me. And if I try to drink out of that, I'm going to drown. It is just impossible to drink out of a fire hydrant. And that's this idea of being overwhelmed. You got too much. Either you've said yes to too much. There are no boundaries either from you or your leader. The leader doesn't know that you're overwhelmed and you're just trying to be a good sport. It's like the guys who play football that don't want to come off the field. They're hurt, but they don't want to lose playing time. They don't want the guy on the bench behind them to take the starting spot, so they'll play hurt. And they ended up hurting themselves worse, and they hurt the team because they can't do the job. So being overwhelmed can cause great buildup and make you feel like, wow, I just don't want to go anymore. I just have no room to breathe. The fourth reason for buildup is you feel underappreciated. So this is a situation where we know from all these HR studies that the number one thing that people value, these are people that are working from their leadership, is actually recognition. They value that more than they do a raise. Why? Because we all are humans and we want to be noticed. We want to know that we matter to somebody. That's a huge driving force in every human. So if you feel underappreciated and you keep going to the office and you feel like nobody notices you, nobody says thank you, that you're just basically irrelevant, oh my gosh, that'll cause some buildup really fast. And then the final cause of buildup is you're just bored. A lot of us do really, really well at the job, and we are creatures of progress. And so this happens a lot with young people or people that are middle-aged. They get into a role, and they've been in the role a long time, and there's no challenge anymore. So they go in on Monday morning, and it's just like, I can do this with my eyes closed. Well, that's not enough to keep the fire going. And so it's a blanket that covers up the fire. It just covers it up because you're just like, I'm bored out of my skull. Like, I don't even need to be here. I could practically do this with my eyes closed, like half comatose, whatever the situation is. So boredom can create that. So those are the 5 factors of buildup that left unchecked and undealt with, they will pile up like heavy blankets and cover your flame. And that's why you feel burned out, but you're not. You've got buildup. You need to remove those blankets, those heavy weights on your heart. And then when you do, that fire will rage once again.
Wow. Well, Ken, for people that are listening right now and are saying, yes, okay, I'm checking these boxes, and they're wanting to put this into play, the next thing you tell people to do, Ken, is to stop wasting their time at networking events and updating their online profile and submitting hundreds of resumes. Instead, according to the proximity practice, can you talk about 5 specific things you tell people to do every single day? Could you give us a brief overview of them?
Well, yeah, the idea here is that you don't need to be going to any more networking events because it's like speed dating on steroids. Everybody's there for themselves. Yeah. So in the book, I say stop networking and start connecting. And this is that one-to-one, as I described early on in the interview, where I'm having coffee with somebody and lunch with somebody, and I'm looking them right in the eye and I'm learning from them. Connecting is huge. And so we talk about creating a web of connections in the book. There's 3 things specifically I'll talk about that are going to help you move forward. And it's what proximity allows you to do. And it allows you to learn, do, connect. To learn, do, connect. When I'm sitting down with somebody in true connection, one-to-one, I'm learning from them what I need to know, what I need to do, who I need to know, what places I need to be in, the pitfalls, the length of time I should expect, all these things. And so I'm learning valuable information that will fuel my plan, that will build my plan. So that's the learning. The doing is, I get the opportunity now that I've learned some things. Now I can go do it. And so that's huge. The ability to actually do something about what I've learned. And then the final thing is just the art of connection, because when I'm sitting down with one person, they're going to connect me to others. When I'm in the right places, I'm going to meet the right people. When I'm around the right people, they're going to get me in the right places. So learn, do, connect. That's what you have to be doing every day. If you're learning something, doing something with that knowledge, and connecting, you are going to have momentum and you will climb the ladder. There's just no way around it. So don't overthink this. Learn, do, connect. And proximity allows you to learn, do, and connect. And if you learn, do, connect, you will continue to progress and you'll move up the ladder, and before you know it, be doing work you love and continue to grow in that sweet spot.
That's so good. All right, Ken, so we're on the track. We're going for it. Now, how do we know if we're being obnoxious? In your book, you talk about being bold and audacious, but not obnoxious. So how do we know when we're doing it right?
If you do it the way that I described earlier, which is showing up with humility and hunger and gratitude. Humility, hunger, gratitude. Any order you want to do it. It's kind of the gratitude. Yeah. It's like a double cheeseburger. You got your 2 loaves of bread. You're going to start with gratitude and close with gratitude. Gratitude in between there's a lot of humility and hunger. And that right there is a great burger that's going to win every time. People are going to say, hey, that was enjoyable. I want to keep helping them. I want to stay in touch with them. I want to track their success. They're going to open up doors for you. So the obnoxious is coming at it, and it's not that sandwich. See, audacious is just the ability to ask and kind of put yourself out there and say, hey, would you be willing to meet with me? That's audacity. To approach people that most people won't approach. Or just approach anybody. A lot of people won't approach anybody for help. Now, obnoxious is coming at it the complete opposite. It's not gratitude. There's no humility. It's just the hunger part. Hey, I'm trying to make it, and you're just awesome. And man, I need connections. I'm here to connect. Who can you connect me with? Well, I'm not going to connect you with anybody. You haven't even asked me. You haven't even asked me my insight. You haven't asked for my wisdom. You just asked for my help. And I'm not going to help somebody that I don't like. I'm not going to help somebody I don't trust. I'm not going to help somebody I don't connect with. So the obnoxious is everybody can see you coming a mile away. You're just there to extract what you need from them, and then you're gone. You're like a mosquito. You're irritating. You fly in, you bite them, suck their blood, and fly away. Nobody wants to help a mosquito. Every time I see a mosquito, my first instinct is to swat it. And that's what will happen if you're obnoxious. So that's the difference between audacious and obnoxious.
Oh, Ken, that is so clear-cut. Thank you for that. And as we're winding down today, I'd love to know if there's anything we haven't talked about today that you'd want the listeners to know right now. What would that be?
Yeah, I just want them to know that it's possible. I don't care if they're 25, 35, 45, or 55. That it is possible to get where you want to go. It's not too late. The ship hasn't sailed. And this proximity principle actually can speed up the process. It's still going to be a process. I don't know what your timeline is going to look like, but here's what I know. That what can seem impossible actually is very doable if you practice this time-tested principle. I'm the first person to call it the proximity principle, but I'm not the first person to say that if you get around the right people and you get in the right places, that's a good thing. And so what we've done here in this book is we've given you specific people, specific place. We haven't even talked about the 5 places. We can leave that for the readers. But we are going to walk the reader right into the people and places that they need to be around. And if you handle yourself the right way, like we talked about already, opportunity will come your way. You won't look for opportunity anymore. Opportunity will find you. Now, what you do with that opportunity, that's another book. But I want people to understand that opportunities are there if you put yourself around the right people in the right places.
There it is. The proximity principle. He is Ken Coleman. Ken, thank you so much for being here today. You are such an inspiration to my own life. I really value your wisdom, your time, and just everything you represent in how you're leading people across the country. So thank you, Ken, so much.
Chris, it's my honor to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I hope you took a bunch of notes and are motivated to do the things you need to do to step into the career you really desire if you're not already there. So again, to boil down today's conversation with Ken, the proximity principle is all about connecting with the right people in the right places in the area of your passion or interest. It's that simple. Now, it will take time. It will take discipline, and it will take perseverance and a willingness to stay committed to the process. Like Ken asked, are you willing to do what it takes and wait as long as it takes to pursue your dream job? Answer that question right now, my friends. Answer that question and begin to make the choices to make the changes you need to be in the career in which you desire. Again, Ken's brand new book, The Proximity Principle, is available right now everywhere books are sold, and I have links to purchase it in the show notes over at wintoday.tv, so please go get your copy right now. And hey, last thing, I want you to connect with Ken over on social media. You can find him at Ken Coleman Show on Instagram and at Ken Coleman on Twitter. Of course, he's on Facebook too. And be sure to tune in to the Ken Coleman Show on Sirius XM Radio Channel 111 or download the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, next week here on the show, I'm so excited to share a conversation I had with Jordan Lee Dooley, in which we're going to talk about her journey to wholehearted living and how you can do the same. Here's a preview.
So many of us are like searching for the purpose, right? We say, I need to find my purpose. I need to go after my dream. And I kind of had to figure it out. And I'm like, no, I think we're going to be really disappointed if we think of it like that. Because if we wrap it up into something that we can find, such as a certain job or position or opportunity, those might really bring our purpose alive, right? They might be way more in line with our gifts and our abilities and where we need to be walking. But I had this big realization that no, the purpose is inside. We don't discover it somewhere. And I think we have to remember we have the opportunity and the privilege to bring it to specific positions. I think we often think those specific positions will give it to us, right? When I start that podcast, or when I become a doctor, or when I get that next, whatever the milestone is, we often try to put it there.
That's next week right here on Win Today. Don't miss my conversation with Jordan Lee Dooley. Well, thanks again for joining my conversation today with Ken Coleman. If you are brand new to the show and you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button on whichever device you're listening to Win Today on right now. That way, each and every week, you'll get a fresh episode directly to you without having to do another thing. So listen, if today's conversation with Ken about finding your dream career resonated with you, I want you to do something very specific right now, and that's share the episode via text message with 5 of your friends or family members. I don't care if it's on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. Share the episode right now. Text 5 people and say, you've got to listen to this because I believe you have the opportunity to get in front of the right people and the right places to land your dream job. It's that simple. And guys, until next week, visit me over at wintoday.tv for blog posts and archived podcasts, all aimed at helping you design your roadmap to wholeness from the inside out. I hope you have an awesome week. I cannot wait to talk to you again right here next week with Jordan Lee Dooley. Bye-bye.